Hi, everyone. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance. And today I am here with Samantha Bartram from Kokosing Nature Preserve. Uh, we're both sitting outside. We both love to say it's a lovely day. It's a little hot and humid, but uh, Samantha, it's great to have you. Samantha is the Green Burial Coordinator at Kokosing Nature Preserve in Gambier, Ohio. Sam worked for more than a decade in journalism, editing, and publishing before landing at the preserve almost 1 year ago. When she's not managing day to day operations at the preserve or guiding folks through the green burial pre planning process, she's teaching yoga, gardening, or hanging out with her dog, Rue, and partner, Mike. So, welcome, Samantha.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So, let's get started by learning a little bit more about Kokosing Nature Preserve and how it came to be. I understand it's affiliated with Kenyon College.
It is. We're unique in that we are a project of the Philander Chase Conservancy, which is Kenyon College's land trust. And as far as I'm aware, Kenyon is the only college in the country that started its own land trust. Some will have affiliations with existing land trusts, but Kenyon started its own. And the purpose of that was to conserve land around Kenyon's campus, about a 5 mile radius of Kenyon's campus. Philander Chase, incidentally, are celebrating their 25th anniversary this year of conserving land, and Kokosing Nature Preserve was part of that project. So, our nature preserve was once a golf course. Um, it was a pretty well loved golf course in our community called Tomahawk Golf Course. And in the early 2010s, the owners decided they wanted to put the golf course on the market. It kind of languished there for a little while. They couldn't find a buyer. And Philander Chase stepped in and purchased the property. It's a 51-acre property, and they kind of cut it in half. So 23 acres of that property is now platted for conservation green burial cemetery, and the adjacent acreage is just chilling there. We planted everything to prairie, so the land is just recovering, developing into a true Ohio prairie, and it's there in case we need or want to expand one day. But for now, we're, as I said, 23 acres. We have about 2,300 burial plots within that acreage, walking paths. So we are also a nature preserve, and we encourage people to come out and recreate, take walks, bring the dog, have a picnic. We host some community events there. So we really have been working hard this is our 10-year anniversary, Kokosing Nature Preserve's 10-year anniversary. And we've been really working hard to communicate to our community that it is there. It is this great asset, both for recreation, but also for green burial.
Wow, it sounds beautiful. And I mean, I commend you guys for your efforts. I mean, 10 years, congratulations.
Thank
Uh,
you. Yeah.
so, for our audience, you had mentioned it briefly. Paint a picture for our audience of the preserve. Meaning, I understand it consists of restored prairie and woodland. So, what does that look like for people who maybe are not familiar with what the prairie land would look like in your area?
Yeah, for us, it's a pretty heavy wildflower prairie. So I think, the true, really, really traditional prairies are, they have these amazing, tremendous grasses, right, with these crazy root structures, and they're really restorative for the land. And we have grasses in our prairie as well, but we've really focused heavily on Ohio native wildflowers, partly because of the aesthetics of it, right? We want people when they come to the preserve, especially now through, the fall, to be really impacted by the beautiful flowers and the landscape that they see. We had a Kenyon alumni uh, do the landscaping for Kokosing Nature Preserve. So some aspects of it are echoing aspects of Kenyon's campus. Kenyon has a pretty famous thing called Middle Path, which is this very long path that runs through the center of campus. And our architect, Stephen Christie, echoed that with a big, long, tree-lined gravel path that kind of runs right through the center of the preserve. So when you come to our preserve, you will see that drive, and you can kind of drive all the way down it. It looks over beautiful conserved farmland. Um, We have maintained and improved and restored some of the water features that were part of the golf course, a couple of ponds. We worked with Kenyon professors and students to restore some of the pond to a more natural state, right? You can imagine the runoff from the golf course, all the pesticides and chemicals that they use, fertilizers, had really done a number on the pond. So that's been largely restored with lots of native plants. So when you come to our preserve, really when you walk in, you're just impacted by this wall of green or wall of green in color, depending on what time of year you're there. There's a nice little hill element to it, which people don't usually think of Ohio as a hilly place, but we do have some rolling areas of farmland in our state. And we're really blessed to kind of have it all, right? We have the water, we have a little cluster of old growth forest where we do have some lots for those folks who want to be a tree, right? Or want to return to the forest. We have an area where you can plant a memorial tree on your lot. So starting to try to nurture a new forested area within our preserve. And it's hard to describe without having seen it or having felt the impact yourself, but it is a truly, truly beautiful place. It is extremely restful and rejuvenating as well to be there amid all of the wildlife. We have tons of birds. We just did a bird walk for the community through our nature preserve. So, I mean, it's just one of those places where you can go and find a quiet spot and throw a blanket on the ground and just be there, for whatever you
Well,
need to be there for.
it sounds absolutely stunning. I mean, it sounds to me like it would be well worth the visit for not only anyone in your area, but for people throughout Ohio and, throughout the country itself, if they really want to see what one of these properties look like and understand how they operate. With that being
Yep.
said, if a family were to have a service at Kokosing Nature Preserve, what should they expect? I mean, what is the Kokosing funeral experience?
We really encourage our families to make the experience their own. So every service is different, different sizes, different compositions, different, I don't know, goals maybe or aims of the families that are there. One thing that I think is pretty universal is, and maybe this is obvious, but these folks have a real reverence for nature. And usually the person who has died had a legacy in their life of being connected to nature, connected to the land in some way. Um, I'd say that's maybe one of the top reasons people seek us out for green burial is that they want that return to the earth. They want that dust to dust kind of experience. Um, we excavate our graves, and like most green burial cemeteries, we leave the dirt right next to the grave. So families are encouraged and welcome to help close the graves when the services have concluded. And we usually have folks take advantage of that. Maybe not closing the grave all the way, but throwing some shovels of dirt in the grave and experiencing, what I think is for most people a pretty cathartic experience, being able to physically participate in laying to rest their loved one. But we have had a bagpiper, we've had various kinds of music, we've had, candles and chanting, we've had folks create really beautiful tributes to their loved one. We had a service recently where one of the friends made little wool butterflies out of alpaca wool, which obviously is biodegradable. And she had put native wildflower seeds inside of the wool butterflies so that as they were pulled apart by the birds or kind of, moved around the preserve by the wind, the seeds would disperse. And, it was a small thing, but it was just a really lovely and beautiful like addition to their service. So, you know, people are amazingly creative. And I think another really interesting thing is watching that realization hit people like, oh, okay, we don't have to do the traditional, here is the casket, we're all going to process buy it and sit in this room all day. Not that there's anything wrong with a more conventional funeral or burial experience like that, but I think I have seen true relief kind of pass over people's faces when they realize, like, oh, okay, we can do what we want here. We can invite the people we want. We don't have to have an officiant, or we can have one, or we can have an officiant that is from a tradition or a background that is really unusual, perhaps, for our area, right? And just like closing the grave can be a bit of catharsis, I really find that folks being able to craft their own service and make it the way that they envision it, or the way that they imagine their loved one would have appreciated, is a truly beautiful thing, and I think makes a really big difference in the grieving process for the people who come to have green burial at Kokosing Nature Preserve.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And for the viewers, it's like the purest form of expressionism, a natural burial. Which makes it very different than other services. So I totally understand what you're saying. And how has it been received by the community, in the sense that are they using the property, for recreational purposes, or how do they view it?
Yeah, they are. Kenyon is in Gambier, Ohio, which is it's a village, actually. It's a very small municipality. And we, of course, have a lot of folks who come from the immediate area to walk and hang out and visit. But we also have people come from all over central Ohio. We are the only conservation green burial cemetery in central Ohio. I think at this point in Ohio, there are 3 conservation burial cemeteries. One is up near Cleveland, one is down near Cincinnati, and we are the closest to central Ohio. So that's great for us. We get a lot of traffic from folks in Columbus and surrounding suburbs. Um, we do, I think, still get some people who come. Maybe they visit their kid who's going to Kenyon, and they're just looking for a place to take a walk while they're there, and they don't even necessarily realize that Kokosing Nature Preserve is a green burial cemetery, especially this time of year when the prairie begins to grow up. We do have memorial stones for some plots that are set almost flush against the ground. And as the prairie grows during this season, a lot of those stones become subsumed by the plants. So you don't necessarily see them unless you're looking for them. So I find that to be interesting. People come and they don't even, we see folks sometimes will have photo shoots out there for like weddings or baby showers. And I don't know if they know that they're in a green burial cemetery, or if it would make a difference if they did know. But that's just kind of a neat little reveal that we can do for people, like, oh, this is definitely a wonderful place for passive recreation, but also, did you know that this could be your final resting place? And I think it kind of blows people's minds. I've noticed, I think people are becoming more aware of green burial as a practice generally. So I'm seeing more familiarity of the concept with people. But I think we still have, a fair amount of work to do in terms of really building awareness about the fact that Kokosing Nature Preserve is there, and the things that we offer. So that's been part of my focus as I've joined the team here, is just trying to build awareness, get the word out, host community events, have people out to the preserve so that they can start to really wrap their arms around the concept of green burial in this beautiful natural setting that we are very happy to brag about.
Well, absolutely. And it sounds to me like you guys are doing your job well, because that's really the key to a true natural burial preserve or a conservation burial ground, is to have the living recreate. And what a compliment to have people come and take wedding photos and things like that. I've seen the same type of experiences, so I can appreciate that. And could you just explain a little to the audience? So you're a conservation burial ground, which is a little different, let's say, than a hybrid or a natural burial ground. So just for them to understand, what makes Kokosing different as a conservation burial ground? What does that mean?
Yeah, so we have maybe just slightly more rigorous standards. Obviously, remains cannot be embalmed when they're at Kokosing Nature Preserve. We don't allow any kind of container that's not biodegradable, so no steel caskets and no concrete vaults. I think that might be the sort of separating factor, because some green burial cemeteries or some conventional cemeteries with a section that they have set aside for green burial will still use the concrete vault. And what they'll end up doing is inverting the vault so that the container with the remains has contact with the earth from underneath the vault, but the vault still exists to maintain the landscape above the grave, right? One thing that happens in a natural burial cemetery is our graves settle over time. We mound the dirt, but then of course nature happens, rain happens, and we often have to go back out and sort of rake the earth out, combat, corner sinkage and things like that. A concrete vault prevents that from happening, right? It maintains the aesthetic look of the green burial area, so that they can still mow, they can still do whatever landscaping they're doing. We go very natural with it. We don't allow any concrete vaults like that, and we don't really mess a lot with the graves once they are closed. And that includes in our forested areas. People often ask me, do we trim trees, or do we clean up trees that have fallen down? And we don't really in the forest area. We will if we need to for an interment, but we really let nature take its course as much as we possibly can. So I think that that's probably the main difference. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
no, I think that's a very
yeah.
good explanation for people to understand. I mean, it's meant to look natural. Let the earth do its thing. And I can appreciate that. That's for sure. So we come to the fun part of our conversation. You know, Obviously you guys have been doing this for 10 years. So normally when I ask this question, uh, people don't have that kind of experience under their belt. So, like, where would you envision? We know what the first 10 years, or at least your company knows what the first 10 years have brought for Kokosing. So, what would you like to see in the next 5 to 10 years in the future for Kokosing Natural Burial Preserve or Conservation Burial Preserve?
Wow, that's a really good question. I'd very much like to see us just continue sort of on this. I'd say we're on a nice steady track, but with a discernible uptick, right? I'd love to continue to see, foot traffic, interest in the form of emails, phone calls about the nature preserve. And of course, we want to encourage people to be interred with us. Um, and also going forward, we've got a lot of good ideas for additional community events. We're always looking for greater and deeper partnerships with Kenyon College. There's a lot of educational opportunity in our burial cemetery, and that may not be immediately obvious, but we have a lot of partnership with the biology department, our environmental sciences students, which kind of makes sense, right? To study things like what happens with the soil when you do a prairie restoration, or what happens with the soil when there are human remains buried beneath. And we have participated in many studies about those very things, which I also think, just another little hooray for us, is a really wonderful contribution to this field at large, because while that body of knowledge about what green burial, what impacts it has for the earth itself, right, for the place that those remains are buried in, we don't have a ton of information or scientific information about that just yet. So we're very proud to be able to contribute to that body of knowledge. So we definitely want to continue doing that and exploring other educational partnerships with Kenyon. We've had writers come out, we've had dancers come out. So there's just, I think, the sky is kind of the limit in how we can reach out to younger folks, right? College age folks maybe aren't necessarily thinking about pre-planning for their own funeral, but they may be, able to approach that idea from a different direction, right? Whether it's something educational, or maybe it's something a little softer science, right? A little more philosophical, just talking about death and dying in a way that's a little bit more, maybe I'll use the word healthy, right? A more nuanced or wide-ranging discussion about death and dying that kind of helps us get away from, oh man, it's scary. I don't want to think about my own death, to, okay, well, here we are sitting in this beautiful natural setting. What does it mean to return back to the earth? What does it mean to sequester carbon with your own body, right? What does all of that stuff mean when we talk about death and dying? And I think part of our mission going forward is going to be to provide a place, a context for those discussions, for those conversations, so that people can approach pre-planning, can approach death and dying with a little bit more, I don't know, maybe confidence, or a little bit more of that solid feeling in your heart, like, okay, I understand what this is, and I know this is right for me, and this is why, and this is why I want to evangelize about that out there, tell other people about green burial. So I guess the short answer is like a lot of word spreading and a lot of bringing people into our space and giving them a bunch of different ways to experience it, but ways that will hopefully spark some kind of conversation or some kind of contemplation in the folks that come to us about how they want their final disposition to look.
Well, that's a lovely vision. I mean, it's based on education and activism, and I think that's a great thing. I think you guys are doing a great job. We here at the Global Green Burial Alliance certainly appreciate you today coming on to speak to our viewers a little bit about what you do and where you're located. Certainly always lean on us for any type of support. If we can have any kind of impact on helping you guys, we certainly would love to. So thanks for joining us today, Samantha. Viewers, you can learn more about by visiting kenyon.edu, kokosing naturepreserve.com, and we'll post some links here on this video as well, so everyone can be sure to get it right. So thanks, Samantha. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed. This has been a true pleasure. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You have a great day.
You too. Take care.